And it's 5 minutes after 8 live on ETV, live on NISIM 95.9 and 100.1 live on Facebook with the handle ETV Ghana. You're welcome to tonight's edition of Fact Sheet, and I'm excited for us to have a conversation that takes us back to the classroom. The classrooms where the basics or the basis of our language, we're speaking our English, was taught us. The classroom where we learned to do math. The classroom where we learned the science, which has gotten many to become scientists in this country, and many in the field of maybe teaching and different professions and industries we find ourselves in today. Why the classroom? Fundamental question I believe you'd be asking. Well, our educational sector in this country has become the center stage issue when it comes to media discourse in this country. One, free SHS over the past 2 weeks has been in the media space. What about financing the free SHS in this country? You remember, Otumfuo Osei-Tutu raised concerns about how the free SHS funding is becoming a burden and a strain on the budget that His Excellency the President, through the Finance Minister, presents each year after the implementation of the free SHS in 2017. Should it be a matter of concern for us to talk about? There have been concerns about the feeding program we're running for students who are in the various second cycle institutions. There have been concerns from parents to the effect the students are not fed breakfast, but rather are fed only lunch, and in the evening, as we'd put it, they find their level. These concerns manifested when we got to hear about the indebtedness of the Ghana Buffer Stock Food Company to people who have supplied them food, which in turn is to be used by these schools to feed students in the various classrooms. To the point, earlier this year, there had been threats from the various institutions, especially the Conference of Assisted Senior Secondary School Headmasters, who had indicated that if we're not careful, they'll be forced to shut down these schools as a result of government not releasing funding early enough for them to run the various institutions. If viewers can recollect, it was just last week, after the students had been in school for almost 3 weeks, that some 200 million Ghana cedis was released into the various secondary schools for the running of these schools. But would that suffice? That forms the basis of our conversation today. We'll also take a look at the basic sector, where for more than 3 years now, there have been complaints from various schools and parents and wards people who are interested about how there's been the lack of textbooks for students to use at the basic level. If viewers can recollect, just a few years back, the system decided to change the curriculum we are using, and so we decided to offer a new system so as to run these schools. For 3 years now, this system has been running without textbooks for the students and parents to use to teach their wards even in the house. How could this have been the case? We'll end the conversation with a report from the Africa Education Watch, who have released a report on the level of accountability when it comes to funding our educational system in the country. And I'll take the time to quickly run you through some pointers before we speak to our guest tonight on Fact Sheet. And they say the findings they have: pre-university educational institutions recorded financial irregularities in cash management, procurement and stores, payroll, contract management and tax infractions amounting to over 42 million Ghana cedis, indicating a 78% increase in financial irregularities from 2019 value of 23 million. This is due to a lack of commitment on the part of management of these institutions to implement previous audit recommendations and enforce compliance to public financial management and procurement laws and regulations. These and many more from the report would I be sharing with you immediately after this short break. My name is Samuel Eshen, and I welcome you to tonight's edition of Fact Sheet. Do stay with us. Welcome back to Fact Sheet live on ETV, live on Facebook with the handle ETV Ghana, live on NISIM 95.9 and 100.1. Tonight, to help me try to have a better appreciation of the happenings within the educational sector, I will be joined by Cletus Sundong, who is Policy Associate at the Africa Education Watch. They released a report just today. And then Mr. Peter Anti, who is Executive Director for IFEST, would also be joined on the phone lines by Dr. Daniel Osabute, who is a lecturer at Accra Technical University, to understand even what may be happening to their system when it comes to the tertiary education in Ghana. Once again, welcome to the conversation. So we start off with the concern that has been raised by Archbishop Palmer Bako. He says that it's about time we had a conversation about a review of the free SHS program. That's the system we are running now, merits a review. Let me start a conversation with Cletus. Cletus, good evening, and thanks so much for joining me.
Good evening to you and your valued listeners and viewers.
I'm hoping you're doing well tonight, sir.
Yeah, I'm doing well.
All right, so let's begin the conversation with a view of the general performance of our educational sector. How would you describe how we are running education in this country, most especially the free SHS program, which has dominated, the media space last week?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
Yeah, so my general overview of our education system is one of a 50-50 kind of thing. You know, in as much as we are making gains in other areas as well, we are not making a lot of gains. As you rightly said, the senior high school sector has been making a lot of grounds in terms of infrastructure, and then even the teaching and learning activities that goes on in these areas. Whilst by our various investigations and then research, we have seen that the basic level of education has been totally neglected. So generally, if you ask me the state of our education right now, I would give you just the two levels, the senior high school and then that of the basic education, where we seem to see that the senior high school has a lot of had gained a lot of our priority in terms of the nation's funding of education, while the basic level of education hasn't really made enough grounds because we are investing very low in this area of education.
Now, quick one, how do we measure whether we are doing well or we are not doing well? How do we measure? What are the parameters for the measurement?
Okay, so there are so many ways in which we can measure our success in education. And then with our education, we have developed an educational sector plan, which it gives us indicators as to where we want our education to go, how we want it to go, and then even how we are going to fund particular projects under various indicators. So in order to be able to understand where we are going, the educational sector plan that we have at the moment is what we can review and then also evaluate to be able to know if you are making more ground. And then our current research with CDD Ghana, which we are yet to publish, we have done a review of this educational plan and the mid aspects of it to get to understand where we stand at now in terms of our education sector and then what we need to do, especially at the basic level.
What you didn't say is what these indicators are, as in indexing the performance. What do we look at to say that we are doing well or we're not doing well? Because if you look at, for instance, the senior high school program, the free SHS program, initially there were concerns about the output in terms of the students who will be passing out from the system and the grades they are going to get. But as it turned out, these students came out with very, very good results. If you look at the basic system, where you also have concerns about the level of funding that goes there, it is this same students who pass out with good grades to transition into the senior high school. So what parameters do we use to measure to say we are falling short or we are not falling short?
Okay, so as I said earlier, the educational strategic plan clearly speaks what we need to look at or what we need to wear and what we need to invest in. So if you look at some of the indicators we actually reviewed, we reviewed the area of gender disparity, gender parity. We looked at the transition rate from primary school to junior high school. And then we can even go on to look at it in the context of junior high school, senior high school. Then there were issues relating to assets, the nature of or the state of our school infrastructure. These are all areas in which we can gauge our success and then our success on. So if we are putting it into context, these indicators are supposed to give us a feel of what we are doing and then what we are not doing, so that as we go on, we'll be able to get to understand where we need to make improvements into. Another key indicator is the enrollment rate and then the completion rate. How many people are enrolling in school and then how many people are even graduating. These are all key indicators we actually gauge in our educational statistics.
Quick one. So there have been calls for a review of the free SHS especially, and issues to do with funding for the project. Now, what's your position as Africa Education Watch on this call for a review?
Yes, we have already said a lot about the review of the free senior high school policy, right? And then we have looked at it in the context of funding and then financing the project. As we know, one of the critical things when it comes to the area of education is the problem of financing our public education in Ghana, which is largely created by the competitive demand from the various sectors of the economy on the limited resources that we have. When we look at the senior high school, as I said earlier, a lot of funds are going into that area. And we would like to look at our review in the context of how we can get a lot of people, even though we have made it very free for everyone to go into. We are looking at the financial burden, the free nature of our senior high school has on our economy in terms of impact on our economy, which even though 2-4 has spoken about it, it's being a laudable policy. However, its financial, its economic implication on the country is very huge. So on the whole, we are looking at it in the context of how do we provide or increase access to education without strain or putting a lot of strain on our economy or our financial prowess of the country. And we have been suggesting that, in a way, if we can look at providing some form of scholarship for students who are probably within the private school setting, so that at least we have these students say something at the end of the day, so that at least we can reduce this. We can reduce the level of economic impact on our. Sorry, let me repeat that. So, in order to reduce the economic impact, we are looking at having private school students pay at least 50% of their school fees and then their boarding fees, so that at least it reduces the level of the amount of money government pays for students within the senior high school setting. When we look at how much even a private school students pay as of now, just the normal private schools that we have, at least within a year, parents could pay close to about 2,000 or even more. We know some private schools do pay up to like 6,000. And then if we are looking at this policy being a means-based in where at least individuals that cannot pay at all, we know are mostly within the public system. If we are given the opportunity for them to enjoy it, we are looking at how we can get private school pupils or parents with their students, with their words in private school, to pay at least half of this fee, so that at least you reduce the economic burden on the government.
Now, that point about the free SHS being a strain or a burden on our finances, if we are spending, let's say, close to 7 billion on free SHS over a period of 5 years, now let's say, give or take, you're spending, let's say, 1.2, 1.1 thereabouts every year. Is that what we classify as being a drain?
Yeah, so if you look at how much we actually pump into our education sector, you should see, if you have the trend, you could see that the trend is that we are reducing in terms of the amount of money we spend on our education. And if a good chunk of this money is going to only the senior high school system or only the senior high school system, then we know that other areas or other levels of education is going to suffer. And then again, as students, the number of students that get into the senior high school keeps on increasing every year. And then that means that we are going to pay even more money to get these students in school, right? And as we are paying, not only the feeding aspect takes about 60% of the money we pay in the senior high school system. And we know how things are also increasing day in, day out, and then how much we have to pay. So, the whole economic, the impact on our economy is great, because at the end of the day, we are spending close to about 7 billion of our money on just senior high school. Then it tells you how much of an economic impact this policy has on our general economy.
All right, quickly before you take leave of us, Cletus, let's just attempt to have an understanding of your report, which suggests some mismanagement, misallocation of funding that's meant for some section of our educational sector. Give us a sense of what triggered this report in the first place and what your findings were.
Okay, so generally, Africa Education Watch, this is the second edition of our annual educational accountability report, for which we normally summarize the various key findings and recommendations that are made in the Auditor General's report. This year, which I said again is our second edition, look at three of the reports that were produced by the Auditor General in the levels of second cycle institutions, and then that of the colleges of education, technical universities, and then that of the Ministry of Education together with other selected departments and agencies. So, generally, as I said, can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm with you.
Hello?
I'm with you.
Yes. So, basically, some of the key findings that are given by the Auditor General, for which we have also reviewed and be able to put them in a more summarized form for our readers and individuals that follow the education section. When you look at the pre-university level, which in their report also included that of the colleges of education, reported a huge amount of infractions and then financial irregularities, where the report indicates that over 78% increase in the financial irregularities were recorded after the end of December 2020. And if you look at the amount of money that were accrued in this infraction, was about 42 million. Whilst last year, the amount of financial irregularities that we recorded was about 23 million. So this generally gives us an indication that there is a general lack of commitment on the part of management of these institutions to implement the previous Auditor General's recommendations and then even enforce some form of compliance among these institutions, and then to comply to the public financial management and procurement laws regulations that we have. At the technical university level, even though the issue of COVID and all those instances came in, we saw that there was a huge decrease in the financial irregularities of about 92%, which we have commended the various technical universities and their management for their improved compliance to the various or the previous Auditor General's report and then even the public financial management report. Again, when we look at that of the Ministry of Education and other selected agencies, we will see that there were few financial irregularities reported of about 21.9 million, for which only cash management irregularities amounted to over 20 million, right? And this indicates also a weak compliance to the public financial management laws and regulations. So generally, our report was just to review and then also summarize all the findings that the Auditor General has put forward so that at least everyone will be able to have a feel of what the various interactions within the educational space, and then be able to appreciate and have discussions in this area. And by way of recommendations, we are recommending that the Ministry of Education and the Office of the President must hold the various members of these educational institutions that are responsible for these major financial irregularities in the Auditor General's report. They need to be held accountable, because if most of these board members and then governors of these educational institutions are supposed to be the supervisors of every occurrence in most of these institutions. Therefore, if we have these financial irregularities occurring year in, year out, then that means someone is not doing their work, and then they need to be held accountable. And in holding them accountable, in most cases, what we see is that these individuals are mostly transferred into other institutions, which we are saying that if you take a bad apple and you put them into another area, it will go on to the area that you are putting them in. So we are just saying that these individuals, if possible, should be sanctioned, as well as the management of these institutions who are not seeing to their compliance of our public financial management and procurement law.
All right. Cletus, let me switch and speak to your colleague, Peter Anti from IFest, and pick a few thoughts from him as to the conversation of a review of the free SHS in our educational sector popping up again, and it's coming from prominent individuals in the country, Archbishop Pamabako, Otumfo, several civil society organizations have been raising concerns about the free SHS program. But if we say that it requires some review, what would that amount to? Ms. Anti, good evening and thanks so much for joining me.
Good evening.
I trust you're doing well.
Yeah, I'm fine. Just tired.
I would ask, are you surprised that at this point in time, the conversation about the review of the free SHS program is resurfacing?
No, I'm not.
Why not?
As somebody in the education policy space, I know that when policies are implemented, we review the policies as and when they are being implemented. So I knew that ideally we should be reviewing the free SHS policy around this time. It's running its full course. We have about 2 different cohorts of people graduating from this policy. And by this time, everybody in policy analysis would be expecting some kind of a comprehensive review of the policy to see what works, what hasn't worked, and which areas we need to improve and which areas we will have to leave like that. So it is natural that a lot more people are calling for this review. The only difference is that this time around it's coming from prominent people who, and their own, might not have taken the position that some of us we took right from 2017. And it's interesting that now others are joining the call and asking that government should have a look at how it's implementing this particular policy. So it's not surprising to me.
Now, your field endears you to information which I may not be privy to. What do you hear as some of the challenges bedeviling the free SHS program now?
Well, we all know the principal problem of the free SHS is financing. And when we talk about free SHS, people think that it's just about the government absorbing the fees of the individual. It goes beyond that. It's actually about the running of the entire secondary school system. So in terms of administrative costs and everything in between, the government has taken control of it. And the government is supposed to send money to these schools to ensure that everything is carried out. So when they were paying the things that they used to do, it is expected that this time around, those things are still being done or even improved on whilst the students are not paying anything. And that is why you hear of complaints from feeding to conducting exams, textbooks, furniture, infrastructure, and all those things that has to do with our secondary education. It's simply because when you decide to absorb the fees for individual students in the secondary education system, you are taking over the whole administration of the schools. And as you are aware, those challenges are now there. We have heard of Charles talking about feeding grants. Just recently, I think it's last week, there was a banner headline front page headline from Daily Graphic that government have released a certain amount of money to these schools. And that was after some headmasters, or I think Charles, came out to talk about the challenges they are having in terms of feeding their students. So we know that the basic problem is the financing. And that is why some of us, right from day one, we said that you do not implement this policy by the mode that the government has chosen. And interesting, at that time, the finance minister agreed with us. The finance minister indicated that for him, he doesn't think that he, for example, should not be allowed to pay. And that is how we implement all these kinds of interventions or social policies across the globe. But for us, we decided to go by a wholesale policy, and now it's staring us in the face with all those challenges. And we still, those in government still feel that there's no need to have a second look at this, because that policy technically is a political policy.
Now, we've been having news of students who are being fed once a day. Does Proxy give you that opportunity to hear these rumors we have been hearing? And if it is the case, how does this also affect the academic output?
Yes, we hear a whole lot of stories. Of course, about a month ago, I don't know, a month or two ago, we decided to delve into some of these complaints. Interestingly, we were not able to get people to stand up and then speak and give us the needed information. Now they come to you, they talk, and when you want to find a way to now put the thing in the public domain, they turn around to tell you that we cannot assist you in that direction. And you know this work that we do, if you put an information out there and you don't get the needed evidence to back it, people will turn around and say that you are not being truthful. I remember I spoke to a matron who complained bitterly about the food available. That particular school, they were feeding them rice from Monday to Monday. Rice Monday to Monday. But then when I asked the woman to give me additional information so that we can push this, she told me that, Peter, I will go on retirement in the next 3 years. A day to the day that I'll go on retirement, come and I'll give you all the information you need. And this is the kind of things that we are struggling with. So the rumors would always be there. Most of the students are going through these challenges in terms of their feeding, but you will not be able to get concrete information to put it out there so that you can hold some of these government authority, those in authority yes. to answer to that. That is technically the problem we face. But the rumors are very there. So the only thing that you now have is that when Charles comes out and complains, then you know that, oh, okay, this is giving life to the rumors that we are hearing. And it's refreshing that now we have a Charles president who comes out and speaks when things are not going on well in the secondary schools.
We'll take a short breather. When we come back, we would be asking ourselves, what's the way forward if people are calling for a review? If it's a problem of funding, how do we fund the free SHS? We'll be right back. Welcome back to Fact Sheet live on ETV, live on NISIM 95.9 and 100 points when we're talking about our educational system, concerns that are being raised, especially about the free SHS program, the calls for a review of the program, and whether government must listen or not. At the base of all this is the issue about funding for the free SHS. Some say it's becoming a drain on our national resources and that a second look ought to be taken at the free SHS. But if a second look ought to be taken, how do we fund it? I'm hoping Mr. Auntie can help me with an answer to that question. Ms. Auntie, welcome back.
Hello, I'm here.
So I was asking, if the problem fundamentally is funding, how do we solve that problem?
So you solve that problem by doing what we all know we do with financing secondary education across the globe. Well, we are not an island. So the point is that you do targeting. And anytime we talk about targeting, people come out and create a whole lot of scenarios and ask how are you going to do that? I think about a year or so ago, the minister himself asked that question during an interview with a journalist. And I authored an article which was published widely to explain to him how this is done. And we need to go by targeting, because as we are talking, we have students who have been selected under the Secondary Education Improvement Program, about 10,000 of them, that are being assisted for their secondary education. We know how we select people for leave. We know how we select people for other social intervention projects. So why should it be difficult for us to target students who need financial assistance and then give them the needed assistance, and then those who can't afford, we allow them to pay? We can go by so many models. There are lots of write-ups on this, even within the country, about the free SHS. There have been a lot of suggestions, some saying that let only public school students pay for this. I have said that you can group students into three. You have those who cannot pay, those who can pay partially, and those who can pay full fee. So you provide partial scholarship for some of them, you provide full scholarship for some of them. I have said that you can get this data through the BEC registration process, because when they are registering the students for BEC, they ask them a lot of questions. You can ask your other indicators that we use to now see these students based on this category to those questions. And when they fill those forms and they submit, you take that information, you put it into your system set up, and then you'll be able to now see them, the students, or group the students, or categorize them into these three groups. This is something that can easily be done with the needed algorithms and statistical understanding of how to weigh these indicators. But nobody wants to listen to you. And the reason is that this is a political policy. So you don't win the economic argument. They think that this is about politics, it's about winning votes from people. And that is why, even at a stage where everybody, professionals, social commentators, statesmen, everybody is talking about take a second look at this. A few people in government think that all of us are wrong and they are right.
Interesting. So now that those who can afford, per your position, have gotten a taste of the free SHS without paying a dime, a parent who has 3 kids, one of them already at the senior high school, and for 2 years, maybe the child is in the 3rd year, hasn't paid any tuition fee and is being catered for by government, why do you think such a person would want to pay?
I didn't get a preamble to the question. I don't know.
I'm saying that the point you make about categorization, where those who can pay should be allowed to pay. I'm saying that how do you convince a man who has gotten that burden of paying school fees taken off him, though he has the capacity to pay, and is enjoying, maybe he has 3 kids, one already is in secondary school, maybe in the 3rd year, and so for the 2 years, he hasn't paid any fees. And so that money goes to be used for another thing. How do you convince such a person to now forsake that and then come back to the fee-paying system?
All right. So that is why we should have done this at the implementation stage of the policy. Now, if you want to do this kind of a change, you have to initiate a review process. You have to do a comprehensive analysis of the policy, engage the public about your findings, and let them know the burden that the policy is putting on your finances. Now, from that stage, you now appeal to the public that because of A, B, C, and D, this is the direction that we want to go. And I think that people within the country, if we see that there is fairness in the evaluation of individuals in the classification process, it is not going to be something difficult for anybody to do this, because all of us have been complaining about this thing. And we know that those in the upper class and those in the middle class won't be able to afford secondary education for their work. They pay huge sums of money to educate their kids at the basic level. They are attending international schools and other schools. So why should it be difficult if, at the end of the day, after running this policy for a period of time, we come out to say that this is the findings that we have and these are the challenges that we have identified, and going forward, this is how we want to modify the implementation of this policy. I think that with the needed public discourse, opening up and being frank with the people, it is going to be easy to do that. But that would also mean that the government is now going to backtrack on its promise to the people. And that is why I say that this is a political policy. And it will look like that the opposition told you long ago about this and you didn't listen to. So now whatever you do, it's like you are scoring an own goal. That is the problem that we are having now. So whether we are financing this policy, whether we are going to start the kids in the school, we should continue with this policy, because any review of this policy will mean a political mark for the opposition. But we shouldn't think like that. If the focus is about the interest of the country, if the focus is about ensuring that the kids get the needed kind of education that we want for them at the secondary school level, and we need to inject lots more money into financing this thing, and we are not getting it, we should be able to take that bold step, be frank and honest with the people, and then do what we have to do.
Now, I'll ask, you make the point about the opposition taking advantage of the situation if the government decides to make a U-turn. How do we depoliticize this matter and disabuse the minds of people that it is possible, if you have the capacity to pay? Those two issues therein, the political and then the willingness to want to pay.
It is going to be difficult. If I tell you it's easy, I'm lying. It's going to be very difficult, because we have stressed this for a long period of time. Just recently, the two former vice chancellors of the University of Ghana have come out to recommend that we have to look at the financing of the free SHS, right? The response from the ministry, I think the spokespersons from the ministry said that what the statesmen, these renowned educationists are saying is something that will not help with the free SHS. So that has been the approach from day one. All of us that have suggested that we go this direction are seen as anti-free SHS, and that is how we are called. So it's going to be very difficult for anyone to depoliticize this issue, and that's why I said that the free SHS have now become a political policy, and therefore, no matter the kind of economic analysis, the financial analysis that you do, you are not going to win it. And it's going to be difficult for any government, I mean this current government, to backtrack on how they are implementing this policy. It's going to be difficult. It's going to be difficult.
Well, Ms. Auntie, you stay with me just a bit longer because we're taking a short break. When we come back, we will try to look at the repercussions for the tertiary system if the free SHS system is suffering all these challenges. We'll be right back. To Fact Sheet Live on ETV, and we have just about some 6 minutes to end the conversation. And Mr. Pitanti asked the question before we went for the break that does this or would this in any way have some serious ramifications for our tertiary education system?
See, remember recently there was a suggestion from Corridors of Power. Of course, they said that it was initiated by UTAG, where they were asking that the students at the tertiary level to be thinking of paying full fees. What we are doing now is to ensure that we get a lot more people to access tertiary education, and that is why the government is financing the policy. Now, if we are not able to provide all the needed kind of assistance, resources, and everything that these students need to be able to go through the system and pass well and prepare for tertiary education, the first thing that we are going to have on our hands is the issue of quality. What kind of education are we offering these kids at the senior high school level for them to now graduate to the tertiary level? And if you talk to some of the people who teach at these tertiary institutions, they will tell you that the standard, just as we have seen that from moving from JHS to SHS, the quality of students seems to be going down. That's the same thing that people will tell you, those who teach in the tertiary institution will tell you that the quality of students that are moving to tertiary institutions now is going down. Aside
that point you just made, Zanti, hold on 1 second. The point you made about quality, are the results coming from the senior high schools not indicative of the quality not being sacrificed?
I didn't get that. You said, what do I mean by quality?
Yes, the loss of quality in terms of proceeding to the tertiary institutions. I'm saying that has the WASSCE results not been a vindication or an indication the quality is not being lost in terms of the products we are churning out, seeing the grades these students got?
Sorry, I'm listening to you.
I will try again.
Please take it again.
Okay, I'm saying that you made the point about quality.
Yes, I said quality.
Yes, and I'm saying that the various results from even the first batch of the FSHS students.
Results?
Yes. Is it not indicative that we are not losing out in terms of quality?
No, I have said this. I have said this. It's landed me in trouble. But I don't say things that I don't know. I've said several times that you cannot link the performance in WASSCE to free SHS. If anybody has done such a scientific work and want to prove that the students passed the WASSCE because of the free SHS, they should just bring it and then we all have a debate on it. I've said it several times. I got into a big issue, but I still don't care. If you have a document, a research work, a scientific paper linking free SHS to pass rate in WASSCE, you should bring it and let us see. It is always interesting to look at the averages and say that we are doing well with the performance at SHS. But within that average, you note that there are certain schools that are scoring 0%. And I've even proved this one time on TV where you saw, I proved to the panelists on GTV, Talking Point, that in certain districts, while they were scoring higher after the introduction of free SHS, they are scoring less. And these are data from the Ministry of Education. So I am not one of those who think that the performance of students in the WASSCE is because they have free SHS or they do not have free SHS. What I'm saying is that because you are not providing the needed resources for the students, these are input variables that goes into quality education. So at the end of the day, you might have an average. You have a number that says that there is a pass rate for this particular school. But when you go deep into that particular school, because you have large classes, because they were not having textbooks and other things, the individual performance and their ability to graduate to tertiary schools and be able to move with the tertiary education system, it's not going to be there. And that is something that you can verify from literature. When you have challenges with input variables, the outcome in terms of the students' ability to now progress to the next level of education becomes a little bit difficult. And that's the point I was trying to make. But my second point, which is very important, is that within the education structure, we don't only have secondary education. We have basic education, we have tertiary education. So whilst you are pushing all your money to the secondary education, you are in one way or the other sacrificing the amount of money that should go into the other subsectors within the Ministry of Education. So the implication of this is that we are reducing the budget for tertiary education in order that we'll be able to sustain a policy that can be reviewed and implemented in a more financially reasonable way. And that is the second thing. So money that can be used to improve infrastructure at the senior high school, at the tertiary level, in terms of lecture rooms, in terms of lecture halls and other things, would not be able to go there within the same education structure. They are now still being moved to support the secondary education.
All right.
A typical example is if you check the allocations for basic education, we've reduced it, the portion of the budget that supports basic education. We reduced it for almost like 50%. It used to be something higher around 2008. Now we are doing like something around 16%. And it's because we have decided to finance the free SHS, and the kind of investment we need to make in our basic education is not there. And you hear everybody now talking about basic education and the kind of challenges that they are going through. So its implication on financing other subsectors within the education system is profound, and we need to have a look at it.
Mr. Petanti, I will thank you for making time to join us tonight on Fact Sheet. And Mr. Kletus, I'm also grateful you joined me today from Africa Education Watch. Mr. Anti from iFest, I thank you for joining us tonight on Fact Sheet. And our conversation has been on the educational sector of Ghana, with focus on the free SHS and the calls for a review of the program. My name is Samuel Eshen, and it's been a pleasure coming your way tonight with Fact Sheet. Have a good evening.